Rob K, recovered alcoholic. Rob
Sorry
K,
about that.
recovered alcoholic. And on page 63 of your big book, you will find the third step prayer. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Excellent, Rob. All right, so we are at the very, very top of page 36, but I think what we're going to do is go back a paragraph. We told him what we knew of alcoholism, and that'd be on page 35. And I will let these people in, Rob.
You got it, Leo. Page 35, everybody. We told him what we knew of alcoholism and the answers we had found. He made a beginning. His family was reassembled, and he began to work as a salesman for the business he had lost through drinking. All went well for a time, but he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. To his consternation, he found himself drunk half a dozen times in rapid succession. On each of these occasions, we worked with him, reviewing carefully what had happened. He agreed he was a real alcoholic and in a serious condition. He knew he faced another trip to the asylum if he kept on. Moreover, he would lose his family, for whom he had a deep affection.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of things going on here. First of all, at the very beginning of this paragraph, we are looking at, we told him what we knew of alcoholism, and these are kind of the steps, if you will, and the answer we had found, and he made a beginning. So really, we're looking at steps 1, 2, and 3, and yet he actually relapsed a number of times there. And we call this, actually, if you remember from last week, we call it the AA waltz. It's a 1, 2, 3 drink, steps 1, 2, 3 drink. And a lot of people are afflicted with that kind of beginning, if you will, and trying to get to that point where they've got enough of awareness and acceptance and honesty with regard to their higher power, and being able to rely on their higher power to get them past this little dance that goes on. If you look a little bit down the paragraph here, but he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. To his consternation, he found himself drunk half a dozen times in rapid succession. And again, we're talking about that AA waltz, that 1, 2, 3 drink. A little further on, he does, in fact, at this point, agree that he is a real alcoholic and in a serious condition. So again, he repeats his step 1. And from there, he is in jeopardy, much like we have all been, at least at one time or another, in losing something very valuable to us. In this case, it's he is losing the deep affection. Well, he's losing his family, for whom he has a deep affection for. So it's essentially one of those situations where, you know, the family is about to abandon him. They've kind of had it up to here, and it is definitely a big loss if he has it. And a lot of times we don't really realize the things that we're losing or that we've lost. The pain and suffering that we've caused, not until we kind of wake up, we get our higher power, we rely on our higher power, and from there we start to realize just the how much damage we've actually incurred on others and things. Rob?
Yeah, and as you said, Leo, you know, he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. You know, he did what a lot of people do in our fellowship. You know, they admit that they are powerless over alcohol, that their lives have become unmanageable, even though they don't really understand what that means. You know, they know that they've had problems with alcohol, but why do they have problems with alcohol? They don't really understand. You know, they just fail to go through with the program that is found in the big book. You know, they do the dance where things they stop drinking for a couple of weeks and they think they're making too big of you know, maybe they're not really alcoholic. The melody starts playing with their mind, saying, you're not really, you don't drink too much. Come on. You know, you had that one night, you got a little silly and things didn't go your way. You know, our minds start telling us, oh, you can drink. You know, you can have a drink. Don't worry about it. And that's where we find a lot of people in the fellowship. You know, they come in they get a couple weeks, a couple months, then they go back out, and because their brain starts telling them it's okay. They forget that, it's a 12-step program, not a 3-step program.
Hmm.
And you know what? It's up to, and I keep harping on this every week. It's up to us to inform people of that. And it's so important that we carry this message that we're reading about, because if we don't, a lot of people will not make it. And so it's up to us. So we're going to be on the top of page 36, everybody. Right at the top. Yeah, he got drunk again. We asked him to tell us exactly how it happened. This is his story. I came to work on Tuesday morning. I remember I felt irritated that I had to be a salesman for a concern I once owned. I had a few words with the boss, but nothing serious. Then I decided to drive into the country and see one of my prospects for a car. On the way, I felt hungry, so I stopped at a roadside place where they have a bar. I had no intention of drinking. I just thought I would get a sandwich. I also had the notion that I might find a customer for a car at this place, which was familiar, for I'd been going to it for years. I'd eaten there many times during the months I was sober. I sat down at a table and ordered a sandwich and a glass of milk. Still, no thought of drinking. I ordered another sandwich and decided to have another glass of milk.
So, setting the stage, here is a gentleman that is he's still struggling with his alcoholism. At this point in time, he goes to work one day, has no intention of drinking whatsoever, and he is on a normal path of his kind of daily routine. He's going to see a prospect about a car, decides he's going to stop off at this diner slash bar and have a sandwich and milk, and we'll find out that things don't go quite the way they should. And I'm going to relay another story to you. I was one of those people that would hide my alcohol, and I would hide it in Gatorade bottles and put it in the garage, disguising it, doing whatever I could. And I found myself with no intention whatsoever to drink. I pulled out a lawnmower and was going to mow the small lawn that I have, and there's this bottle of alcohol. And at first, my first thought was, oh my gosh, here I am, the tingling in my spine, the kind of the, clamminess comes up, and I'm like, oh no. So I sit there and I mow the lawn, and I have no intention of drinking. But then when I finish up, I just decide it wouldn't hurt. And there I am, without even thinking about it too much after the fact. I had all of the time that I needed in order to make the right decision. I made the wrong decision, and there I was, right back drinking again. And the guilt, the remorse, the regret, all of those negative feelings washed over me. And here I was, just waiting to get caught, which I knew I would, because I never was able to do it without getting caught. And there I was drinking again. And I had a certain amount of, I guess I would just at that point say I was white knuckling it. There was some amount of sobriety and stuff. So these stories here are very relatable, in that there are similarities with every one of us in our time in trying to stop drinking. And I just relate another story to you, just to show you that there is that we all have been here at least once or twice in the past. So, Rod?
Yeah. A lot of people try to read more into this story than what there is. Okay. We try to come up with ideas that, what? He had words with the boss. Oh, he must have been upset. He showed up on a Tuesday. Where was he on Monday? Don't put these things in. Bill put the story in here with exactly what he has for a reason. It's to show that there were no clouds in the sky. It wasn't raining out. Everything was normal for this guy. Okay. So as I say, I've been in other meetings where they said, well, he never showed up. He didn't show up on Monday. So, something must have happened there. Got into an argument with his boss, he's in a bad mood. So he's just looking for an excuse to drink. No, take Bill for what the story is all about. That's why these stories are in here. It's to show the mental, how crazy, the malady of the mind, how it tells us to take a drink even when we don't want to. So please look at it that way, because that's what the story is all about. Now, the next part, Leo.
Hi guys, I've got in. Thank God I've got
Perfect.
in.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Okay. So the next part is in italic, so it must be really important. So let's pay attention to it. Suddenly, the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it couldn't hurt me on a full stomach. I ordered a whiskey and poured it into the milk. I vaguely sensed that I was not being any too smart, but felt reassured as I was taking the whiskey on a full stomach. The experiment went so well that I ordered another whiskey and poured it into more milk. That didn't seem to bother me, so I tried another.
Here we are. And it's a slippery slope. And unfortunately, this was one of those situations where suddenly, which is the insanity sets in, the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it couldn't hurt on a full stomach. Man, what a misnomer. The idea here is that any alcohol, whatsoever, is not good. And at this point, he goes from 1 to 2 to 3, and who knows how many more after that, but it was more than what he was intending on. And there we go. He's off to the races and on to another debacle. Rob?
Yeah. I think it's bad enough that he's drinking whiskey, but to put it in milk, it just curdles my stomach. I must say, but it just shows that, it's suddenly it came on that he thought it would be a good idea to have an ounce of whiskey in his milk. And it went so well, he did it again. Remember, Bill here is trying to show us the mental insanity of us taking that first drink, that we come up with reasons. The malady will tell you any reason whatsoever to get you to take that first drink. Why? Because that's the malady's job. Okay. Some people call it an obsession. Other people, it's in the book here, it's described as a malady of the mind, and the malady tells you take that first drink. That's the malady's job. Get you to take that first drink, then the allergy takes over, and then you can't control the amounts that you take. So remember, the malady will tell you anything, get you to take that first drink. And you know what? The malady got him. We're at the bottom of page 36, everybody. Thus started one more journey to the asylum for Jim. Here was the threat of commitment, the loss of family and position, to say nothing of that intense mental and physical suffering which drinking always caused him. He had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic, yet all reasons for not drinking were easily pushed aside in favor of the foolish idea that he could take whiskey if only he mixed it with milk.
Yeah, what a predicament this Jim is in. And knowledge does not fix this situation. It's not going to be enough. No matter how much knowledge we have, it's not enough. And even though he says he had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic, yet all reasons for not drinking were easily pushed aside. That's the malady and the insanity that Rob is talking about, and in favor of the foolish idea. Okay, drinking is a foolish idea for people like us that have this affliction, that's this disease. And obviously, thinking that you could mix it with milk would be all that would fix everything. It just isn't going to do so. There's a good definition coming up of the malady here. This next paragraph, well, actually, the next 2 paragraphs are really good. A really good definition of the malady. So, just as I've highlighted it as such. Right.
Okay, top of page 37, everybody. Whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. How can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? You may think this is an extreme case. To us, it is not. Far-fetched, for this kind of thinking has been characteristic of every single one of us. We have sometimes reflected more than Jim did upon the consequences. But there was always the curious mental phenomenon that parallel with our sound reasoning, there inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking the first drink. Our sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. The insane idea won out. Next day, we would ask ourselves in all earnestness and sincerity how it could have happened.
Yeah, there's always that question at the backside of it, how this happened, why it happened, what am I doing, that type of thing. It's this lack of sound reasoning, this throwing out of anything that would be considered it would just, the sound reasoning would just would leave us. I'm sorry. There inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse. Oh, it can't hurt. Oh, I can mix it with milk. I've got a full stomach. Oh, nobody's gonna know. I can take a drink and be fine. And yet here we are. As soon as I come into the house, for example, after mowing the lawn, you can smell the alcohol and you can even see it on my face. I was just, it was just a bad place to be. And what gets what brings so much consternation to it is the fact that there are other things that we can actually say no to, and that's really the key here, is the ability to be strong enough to be able to say no and actually have the strength to do that. And that's what our higher power is for. But there are things out there that we would never do, and yet here we are knowing the consequences related to drinking, and yet we still make the wrong decision and go down that path. And we find ourselves, wondering, being completely beside ourselves the next day, with the damage, laying at our feet, and people yet again, one more time, being in a bad place with us, and yet here we are. So it's a crazy thing. It's an insane place to be, and it is what we call the malady of the mind. Rob?
Yeah, Leo, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that you used to try to hide alcohol around the house.
I did. It was in the
Who would
garage.
have done that? Who would think to do that?
I know.
Only an alcoholic hides alcohol around the house.
Yeah.
And even people that live alone would hide alcohol too. So that's the part that really just floors me. But it's we're getting into the mental part now, because we know that we have the allergy. Okay, we've learned about it in the doctor's opinion. We know we can't take any alcohol whatsoever into our system. So therefore, the main problem lies in our minds, is why we take that first drink. And here's Bill, showing people that are taking that first drink for crazy reasons, mixing it in milk. Oh, geez. I can't get over that. But it just goes to show how crazy we are to do these things when we know what the end result will be. But that's how strong our brains are, that to tell us this time it's going to be different. We're on page 37. In some circumstances, we have gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. But even in this type of beginning, we are obliged to admit that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of what always happened. We now see that when we began to drink deliberately instead of casually, there was little serious or effective thought during the period of premeditation of what the terrific consequences might be.
Well, the consequences, that's really what the crux of our problem is. And when we drink, we create consequences. And so it's really that we have a consequence problem. And I will say this: we'll say it again in the future here, but it's not really a drinking problem. It's a consequence problem. It's the fact that we can't handle our alcohol. We drink to excess. We find ourselves creating a lot of problems for ourselves and a lot of other people. And this deliberateness of justification that we play in our heads and try to figure it out over something that we've gotten angry over, or even to celebrate. Something great happens or good happens, and we decide, well, that's a good reason to drink. We're going to drink because we're celebrating X, whatever that might be. It doesn't have to be just nervousness, anger, worry, or depression. But it seems that people drink because they're angry. They drink because they're incredibly happy. And in our case, we don't really have to have an excuse. We drink just because, but nonetheless, we justify it and then find ourselves in a situation where we've created consequences. And once again, we're looking around going, what happened? Why did this happen? Why do I do this? And it's never, it never ends well, and it's no fun. And that's really a big deal here, that my drinking ceased to be fun. It ceased to be normal. It ceased to really satisfy what I was looking for in regards to that, trying to fit in socially, trying to just, have an event that would be commensurate to a normal drinker, because I had no ability to drink like a normal person. Not only was I hiding alcohol, Rob, but I was hiding drinks. I would mix a couple of drinks, make it look like I was drinking one, but I would have the other one next to the refrigerator or something, and I would be drinking a second one without most people knowing, although I'm sure that they did know. And there I was again. So I was kind of doing a double on the hiding, both the alcohol and then the drinks themselves. And consequences were huge. I look back now and can't believe the problems that I created. Rob?
Yeah, we're going to go into a new story now. Here's another story that's going to show us the insanity. And this is what I love about Bill's writing, is that he could have just kept it to clinical research, etc. But no, he brings in these case studies that bring these people to life a little bit, or brings the book to life for me. And they hit home. So we're at the bottom of page 37. Our behavior is as absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink as that of an individual with a passion, say, for jaywalking. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings. Up to this point, you would label him as a foolish chap having queer ideas of fun. Luck then deserts him, and he is slightly injured several times in succession. You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. Presently, he is hit again, and this time has a fractured skull. Within a week after leaving the hospital, a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. He tells you he has decided to stop jaywalking for good, but in a few weeks, he breaks both legs.
Yeah, so we're really painting a picture here where our consciousness and our normal thinking would sit there and say, of course we wouldn't do this. And that is the sound reasoning that we are trying to capture in regards to our drinking. Unfortunately, because we are so far down that path of being an alcoholic, we just don't see it. We can't grab it. We're having a hard time with it, and we find ourselves being just like this person that's jaywalking. And as absurd as it might sound, it's reality for all of us, that we basically say, to heck with it, we're going to drink no matter what, and we find ourselves again and again with the consequences of drinking, and they would be commensurate to somebody that was jaywalking. We get hurt, we hurt others, all kinds of things start falling down around our feet in a negative way. And here we are, much like this person, in a similar situation. Rob?
Yeah, let's change the jaywalking to somebody that goes to treatment. Somebody goes to treatment and then they come out of treatment, and within a couple of weeks they're back drinking. So, and that's what, another way of looking at it. Yeah, it's crazy the guy walks in front of cars, but change this over to a drinking story, and it makes perfect sense. We do things that we don't want to do, and that's what these stories are all about, is to show you the malady, the craziness that is in our mind to get us to take that first drink. On through the years, this conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful or to keep off the streets altogether. Finally, he can no longer work. His wife gets a divorce and is held up to ridicule. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. He shuts himself up in an asylum, hoping to mend his ways. But the day he comes out, he races in front of a fire engine, which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he?
Yeah. So kind of final, if, you know, it's to the point now that he's broken. He's lost his family. He's not able to work, so he's lost his job. I mean, the stories are parallel to our own in that we have had problems with family, we've had problems with work, we've had problems with just everything around us, friends, that type of thing have just abandoned us, and here we are, and you know, looking at it, you know, with a sane mind would say this is crazy, and yet here we are. Here we are. Rob?
Yeah. Now let's take a look at a few things here. He can no longer work. Bill couldn't work anymore. He had used up all his options. You know, Bill Wilson, the founder of this fellowship and the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, he couldn't work anymore. You know, he tries every no means to get jaywalking idea out of his head. We tried every means not to drink, or, you know, we talked about it earlier, you know, mix natural wines, you know, drink beer instead of vodka, drink vodka instead of gin, you know, all these different things. And that's what this is all about. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he, to try all these different things? They're trying to do it on self. He's trying to get the jaywalking idea out of his head by himself. We tried to stop drinking by ourselves, and we failed miserably because we had become beyond human aid. You may think that our illustration is too ridiculous, but is it? We who have been through the ringer have to admit if we substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us perfectly. However intelligent we may have been in other respects where alcohol has been involved, we've been strangely insane. It's strong language, but isn't it true?
Sure. And there's not a lot to say here other than absolutely. If we substituted alcoholism for the jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. And I think we all can raise our hand and say, yep, it's to a certain extent, this has been true for myself in one manner or another with regard to our drinking. Rob?
Yeah, let's go back to page 37 for just a moment. Whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. You know, how can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? Just want to bring that out. Some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply. We admit we have some of these symptoms, but we have not gone to the extremes you fellows did, nor are we likely to, for we understand ourselves so well after what you have told us that such things cannot happen again. We have not lost everything in life through drinking, and we are certainly do not intend to. Thanks for the information.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of pride, I think, that's being demonstrated here. And the fact of the matter is that we may not have been a perfect, you know, we may not have lost our family, may not have lost our job. I know I was certainly on the ledge looking down, and I was at a point where I did, in fact, well, I caused a problem in my job. I was drunk one night and had an issue, and by the next day I had resigned, and also through mutual agreement was let go. So, you know, alcoholism and the alcohol itself caused me to essentially lose a very good job here in my past. And so so it does happen. Didn't happen exactly like what this was happening, where it was an ongoing kind of, you know, whittling away kind of thing with regard to my job, albeit I did start drinking on the job towards the end of my drinking career. So there is some truth to it, but nonetheless, I know each and every one of us can actually sit down and look at our story and find the similarities with regard to that, and realizing that there are some similarities. And yes, you know, thanks for the information again. I think that this is a certain amount of pride. We think that based on the fact that we have the knowledge that we've got, that is going to be good enough. And time and again, we've proven over and over that it isn't. And the last thing I'll say is here for this particular paragraph, remember that we are learning about alcoholism. So we've still got more to learn. There's more left in this chapter, and there's more to the book, quite a bit more. And the bottom line is that we still have a lot more to learn, but we also have a lot more to be honest about. We need to swallow our pride. We need to be able to be in a situation where we're very open and honest to letting go and letting a higher power in and helping us. Rob?
Remember, our brain wants its candy, as our friend Bill from New Jersey always says, and it will tell us anything in order for us to take it. Now we're at the top of page 39, everybody. That may be true of certain non-alcoholic people who, though drinking foolishly and heavily at the present time, are able to stop or moderate because their brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were. But the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. This is a point we wish to emphasize and re-emphasize, to smash home upon our alcoholic readers, as it has been revealed to us out of bitter experience. Let us take another illustration.
Yeah, before we jump into that, this is obviously some drinking foolishly and heavily at the present time, able to stop or moderate because our brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were, meaning that that person is not yet fully alcoholic, if you will, or they're not alcoholic at all. I'm amazed at people that are able to drink, quote, normally, where they drink on occasion. They drink one or two drinks, they leave alcohol in their drink and they walk away from it, et cetera, et cetera. These are people that are foreign, their ability is just foreign to me. I am definitely one of those people that was unable to stop drinking. And I wasn't able to stop drinking based on just self-knowledge. I learned finally about alcoholism, and it took some time for me to get that absorbed and to really internalize it. And it needed to be emphasized and re-emphasized to me time and again in order for me to finally get it. And I had a lot of situations that I could rely on to tell me exactly that I was alcoholic. All right, let's look at the next illustration, Rob.
Okay. Fred is a partner in a well-known accounting firm. His income is good. He has a fine home, is happily married, and the father of promising children of college age. He has so attractive a personality that he makes friends with everyone. If ever there was a successful businessman, it is Fred. To all appearance, he is a stable, well-balanced individual. Yet he is alcoholic. We first saw Fred about a year ago in a hospital where he had gone to recover from a bad case of jitters. It was his first experience of this kind, and he was much ashamed about it. Far from admitting he was an alcoholic, he told himself he came to the hospital to rest his nerves. The doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realized. For a few days, he was depressed about his condition. He made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so, in spite of his character and standing. Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. He was interested and conceded that he had some of the symptoms, but he was a long way from admitting that he could do nothing about it himself. He was positive that his humiliating experience, plus the knowledge he had acquired, would keep him sober the rest of his life. Self-knowledge would fix it.
And I would just say self-knowledge would fix it, not for a real alcoholic. And what we basically have here is the person that's finally, his drinking has caught up to him. He hasn't accepted it. He's not being honest with himself or with others. He is in a situation where he's humiliated. Sure, he's embarrassed, okay? But not to the extent that it is a thing that would actually jolt him into saying, I can't do this on my own. I need help. In fact, what he's basically doing with his own amount of pride is saying that he can fix this on his own. He's been humiliated and embarrassed enough that that's going to be enough to basically scare him straight, if you will. And he's also looking at it from the standpoint of a menu type thing. He's like looking at it saying, well, I only have, 5 of the 10 symptoms that you're talking about. So I can't be as far gone as you guys are. So I am not an alcoholic like you guys are. And therefore I'm going to be able to fix this on my own, which obviously is not the case. I know I was there at the beginning and didn't want to admit to it. I was successful in so many other things. Not necessarily wildly successful, but successful in making good decisions, not and I felt like I could just make a good decision and just stop drinking altogether, and or I could moderate and be just fine, which I proved time and again that I couldn't do that. And this is obviously what's going to happen as well in this case. Now, this particular person, just as an aside, his actual name is Harry Brick. I'm not sure Rob has put the information or the story of Harry Brick into the chat for everybody to read. But nonetheless, this is based off of a real person and a real person's story. Rob?
Okay. Self-knowledge would fix it. Who else had self-knowledge and thought that it would save the day? Bill. Yeah, and people, we all thought that once we knew a little bit about it, Roland Hazard said the same thing. Self-knowledge would fix it. And it doesn't. We are powerless. We cannot do it on our own. And that's what they're hammering home over and over again through the book. That's what I enjoy about this book. Now we got case studies that are showing us how crazy it is. Page 40, everybody. We heard no more of Fred for a while. One day we were told that he was back in the hospital. This time he was quite shaky. He soon indicated he was anxious to see us. The story he told is most instructive, for here was a chap absolutely convinced he had to stop drinking, who had no excuse for drinking, who exhibited splendid judgment and determination in all his other concerns, yet he was flat on his back nevertheless.
Yeah. Not much to say here other than the fact that here we are a little farther gone, a little bit closer to reality, and being a little bit more honest with the fact that his situation was becoming more and more dire. Rob?
Yeah, on page 113, when we get further into the book, it talks about planting the seed. That, we let the person know about our disease, and we plant the seed, and we hope that it takes root. They might not want it at that time, but as they progress, okay, they'll want it. So we hope that the seed takes root, okay, and that our ideas that they will come in the next time they will call us, and they will want what we have. Let them tell you about it. I was much impressed with what you fellows said about alcoholism, and I frankly did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. I rather appreciated your ideas about the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink, but I was confident it could not happen to me after what I'd learned. I reasoned I was not so far advanced as most of you fellows, that I had usually been successful in licking my other personal problems, and that I would therefore be successful where you men failed. I felt I had every right to be self-confident, that it would only be a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard.
Yep. And again, here we are trying to convince ourselves that our self-will and self-knowledge was going to fix everything, and yet it's not going to. And this hits home. It hits home for me, and I'm sure it hits home for a lot of you with regard to the fact that you would learn a certain amount about alcoholism. You would figure out, this insanity that precedes the first drink. We're not there yet, but the allergy where once you've started drinking, you can't stop. I mean, all of these things start to materialize for you. And they become reality, and yet here you are thinking that you were strong enough and had the internal ability to just stop on your own, and obviously you can't. So this is basically the progression of alcoholism. It is we are at that point in time where a person is becoming aware of their alcoholism. They're still having a hard time accepting it and internalizing it and admitting to it, but they're starting to get to that point, which again, it's kind of he's kind of having this kind of educational process, if you will, where it's a little bit at a time. He's kind of a couple of steps forward, a step back, a couple of steps forward, 2 steps back, and it's etc. But the point is that he is at least progressing with the knowledge and the awareness, and ultimately with the acceptance that we will see as we kind of go along here. But that's kind of the process that most of us have gone through. And this is a great example of just how we got there. and got to where we are today. Rob?
Yeah, I love hearing the fact that I felt I had every right to be self-confident, that it would only be a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard. Okay. Remember, keeping on guard, because we're going to read about that on the next page. In this frame of mind, I went about my business, and for a time all was well. I had no trouble refusing drinks and began to wonder if I'd been making too hard a work of a simple matter. One day I went to Washington to present some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I'd been out of town before during this particular dry spell, so there was nothing new about that. Physically, I felt fine. Neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. My business came off well. I was pleased and knew my partners would be too. It was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon.
Yeah, and I guess we're kind of in a similar place that Jim was in. If you remember, he's having a good day overall. He's out, thinking about selling a car, stops off at a diner slash bar, and things just unravel at that point. You can kind of feel the same thing going on here. He's having a great day. The business has gone well, and he's feeling pretty good about himself as he's going along here. So we're setting the stage for what's to come next. Rob?
Yeah, in the fellowship we're told about Halt, hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. To watch out for these things. Does it sound like this? For Fred? No, good day, bad day, alcoholics drink. That's what we do, So remember, when you hear Halt, the whole idea about these stories is that Bill is showing the mental insanity. These people did not want to drink. They did not expect to drink. There was no reason for them to drink. There was no premeditation. They just thought it suddenly. It comes out of the blue to them. I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. That was all, nothing more. I ordered a cocktail on my meal. Then I ordered another cocktail after dinner. I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me a highball would be fine before going to bed. So I stepped into the bar and had one. I remember having several more that night and plenty the next morning. I have a shadowy recollection of being in an airplane bound for New York and of finding a friendly taxicab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. The driver escorted me about for several days. I know little of where I went or what I said and did. Then came the hospital with unbearable mental and physical suffering.
Absolutely. Here we are. The progression's going along. He basically has convinced himself that a couple of drinks is going to be fine, and then follow that up with a walk, probably have a little bit more of a clear head, and decides that he's doing okay, and he goes in and starts drinking, and then things just unravel from there, and finds himself without much of a recollection. So he's in what I call kind of that brownout phase, almost a blackout. But point being is that he's going through the process of getting back home, and he has little to no recollection of anything that he's doing. He gets in a taxi, and that taxi driver takes him around. Instead of his wife, I try to picture this. His wife has come to the airport to try to pick him up, I guess, and there he is. He gets into a taxi, and then she doesn't see him for the next several days, and he knows little of what he did, what he said, where he went, and that type of thing. And man, what a spree that this person found themselves in, and the problems just probably mounted on top of each other. So. Rob?
Yeah, I love this squiggly writing. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. Who else felt the same way? Bill Wilson, when he was at the Mayflower Hotel, thought that, well, I can go into the bar and have a couple of drinks. But no, he realized what would happen. So where did he go? He went to the telephone, got a hold of Reverend Tunks, who gave him Henrietta Seiberling's phone number, who got him in touch with Dr. Bob. Decisions are made. Do we go right or do we go left? Here Fred made the wrong decision. Thank God Bill Wilson made the correct decision. As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over that evening in Washington. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time I had not thought of the consequences at all. I had commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. I now remember what my alcoholic friends had told me, how they prophesied that if I had an alcoholic mind, time and place would come. I would drink again. They had said that though I did raise a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, just that did happen and more. For what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from that moment that I had an alcoholic mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help me in those strange mental blank spots. I'd never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then it was a crushing blow.
Yeah. And this person is finally at that point where you're getting near rock bottom, if not at rock bottom, finally admitting to themselves that they have a problem. There's demonstration here of the powerlessness over alcohol, the inability to stay away from that first drink, which is the malady. And then also, as he said, I remember having several more that night and plenty the next morning. The allergy had also kicked in, and he had not had the ability to stop once he had started. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that we've got both symptoms being demonstrated in this story. One is the malady, and the second one is the allergy. And obviously, it has got him back into the hospital. And at this point, he's looking around going, oh my gosh, something has to happen. Something has to change. Otherwise, I'm doomed. Rob?
Yeah, in Bill's story, he said, I woke up, this had to stop. This is just another example of the same thing. He knew that he finally saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. Two of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic and if I were really licked this time. I had to concede both propositions. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality such as I had exhibited in Washington was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself.
Yeah, finally, he admits and he's honest with himself. We can read into this in between the lines here. He's finally honest with himself that he had to concede both propositions, that one, he is alcoholic, and two, he was thoroughly licked at this point. So they not only did he admit to that, but they reinforced it with him with their own stories of their own points of time where the malady and the allergy had taken hold and had really got them at their rock bottom kind of situation. So this is an excellent place where you not only have admitted it, but you get it kind of reinforced and solidified that you really are alcoholic. You really do have a problem, and you need to do something in order to fix this. And now your mind is starting to open up to the new ideas of this spiritual remedy that we're about to talk about. Rob?
Yeah, this is his step one, just like on page 30. We have to smash the idea that we can never safely take a drink. Why? Because once we take any alcohol, whatever, into our system, the allergy kicks in, the phenomenal craving, and we're off to the races. We cannot control the amount we take. That's the first step in recovery. This man finally admitted that he could not do it on his own, and that he conceded to the proposition that he had the allergy and the malady. Then they outlined the spiritual answer and program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully. Though I had been only a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out the window. That was not easy. But the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcohol condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be.
Yeah, and so the idea here is that while the concept is easy, the process is somewhat easy. The actual doing of the work is difficult, and it's only difficult because we have still got those small hangups and everything. But once we make that decision, and I would think I could answer for all of us, once we've made that decision, and this huge relief comes over us. It's something of a spiritual experience, as I might describe it. But the bottom line is man, what a nice feeling it is when you finally let go and stop the struggle. And I certainly will raise my hand and say that there was a moment in time when I finally stopped fighting, stopped struggling, and I accepted the idea that I was alcoholic, that I was powerless over it, and I needed something bigger than me to help me, that I opened up and things started to work for me. And yet here we are, the relieved, as in fact proved to be, that my alcoholic condition was behind me. Rob?
Yep. Quite as important was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. I have since been brought into a way of living infinitely more satisfying and I hope more useful than the life I lived before. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moment for the worst I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could.
Yeah, and so we're talking about beyond. This is a kind of a step further in the process here. It's going beyond just your alcoholism. We don't just apply this spiritual experience and condition with only our alcoholic life. We do it with other things, to include getting and letting go of the resentments, the anger, the fears, etc., and you know, and looking at it from a completely change in the way that we approach life, people, work, our spiritual being, et cetera, et cetera. It is a all-encompassing kind of change that has to happen in order for this to really work. Rob?
Yeah, you know what? We have to change our life. You know, I used to think that, or I would act like I was God, you know, that I knew best. Didn't work. You know, we drink because of problems. We drink because it's a good day. We drink because it's a bad day. It was my solution. That solution turned like a boomerang, as Bill said in his story, and cut me to ribbons. It made my life miserable. I had to come up with a new way of living, come up with new conceptions, new ideas that would change the way I was living and make me happier. You know, so in being, you know, they said earlier in the book that you know, we were selfish, you know, self-seeking people. We have to change. How do we change? Well, that's what Dr. Young was trying to get with Roland Hazard, and that's what, you know, Dr. Silkworth was trying to do with other alcoholics. Moral psychology, have them change their way of thinking. How do we do that? Well, spirituality is one way of doing it, because instead of thinking about ourselves, we're thinking about other people. Change it 180 degrees, our whole way of thinking. What can I do for you today instead of what can I get from you today? It's an incredible way of living. You know, it also in the book, as we go further along, it's going to give us ways to deal with problems in our life. When we have fear, what do? Well, we ask God to remove it. When do we ask him to remove it? Now. Take this fear away so that I can enjoy the day. You know, take away this jealousy, take away this envy. You know, take away all these things that are upsetting me. Take away my anxiety. You know, any negative emotion that you're feeling, ask God to take it away so that you can enjoy the day and be useful to him. Leo, it is 12:55. Can we bring in Mr. Bill?
Well, I tell you what, there's only 3 paragraphs left for this chapter. So why don't we just read through those 3? We'll talk about it briefly, and then we'll bring it in for a couple of minutes.
Fred's story speaks for itself. We hope it strikes home to thousands like him. He had felt only the first nip of the ringer. Most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problem. Many doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusion. One of these men, staff member of a world-renowned hospital, recently made this statement to some of us. What you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, correct. As to 2 of you men whose stories I have heard, there is no doubt in my mind that you were 100% hopeless. Apart from divine help, had you offered yourself as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you. If I had been able to avoid it, people like you are too heartbreaking. Though not a religious person, I have profound respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution. Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power.
Absolutely. And some of the things I want to highlight here, most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problems. And the consequences, again, I'll say, bring you to AA. The doctor we're talking about here, with what you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight, is Dr. Percy Pollack. And we are also talking, the two that he's talking about are Bill Wilson and Fitz Mayo, with regard to the hopeless, the 100% hopeless. And we reinforce here that this profound, this change in spirituality is really what is their solution. And there was no other solution that was at the time or even today available to help these folks, as well as ourselves. This also at the end here is good for the self, the sponsor, friends, and spouses. The alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink, except in a few rare cases. Neither he nor any other human being, again, spouse, sponsor, or friends, can provide such a defense in helping someone to stop drinking. This defense must come from a higher power. And this is really what they're trying to drive home in this, at the end of this chapter, is that we're getting ready to really learn about this higher power and what it takes in order to get it. Okay, let's bring Bill in. And if you want to take a couple of minutes, Bill, that'd be great. And if it goes over just a minute or two, I'm sure everybody will be fine with that. Here we go.
Yeah, hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, guys. Good job today. This is a real good chapter. It's got a lot of really good information in it. I like the part where we started, where we talk about Jim the car salesman, right on page 35, and he did steps 1, 2, and 3, and then he wound up going back out again. And like Leo said, that's the AA waltz: 1, 2, 3, drink. 1, 2, 3, drink. And you notice it says. He found himself drunk a half a dozen times in rapid succession. On each of these occasions, we worked with him. They didn't just kick him to the curb. They worked with him. If somebody goes through some of the steps or all of the steps or whatever, and they go back out, they need to go back to step 1 and start over again because they missed something somewhere along the way. And it's our job to help them find out what they missed. We're not just supposed to ignore somebody because they went back out. That happens to be what alcoholics do. We keep drinking when we don't want it. And this chapter keeps on driving home the point that self-knowledge does not work. Over and over and over again, it keeps mentioning self-knowledge doesn't work. Because a lot of times we think if we know what's wrong with us, that's enough to fix us. And it just doesn't work. And he gives us examples here of all of these people in here. And Bill wrote this whole chapter just so he could say this last paragraph in here. He wrote the chapter, the story of the man at 30, Jim the car salesman, the jaywalker, and Fred the accountant, just so he could put this last paragraph in here. Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. That means I can't think my way through it. I can't use self-knowledge to get out of it. I can't outsmart alcoholism. At certain times, I might be able to white knuckle it now and then, but sooner or later, this disease is going to get me. My brain is going to short circuit, and I'm going to drink against my will. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. That means my sponsor can't keep me sober, the people in AA can't keep me sober, my family can't keep me sober. I can't keep me sober with my choice and my willpower. It says his defense must come from a higher power. This is the first time the book mentions higher power, and that's where the defense comes from. It doesn't come from me. It doesn't come from the people in the rooms. The people in the rooms can point me towards my higher power so that I can get a higher power in my life, but that's where my defense has to come from. I can't do it with my self-knowledge. I can't do it with my own willpower. In other words, you can't fix a broken tool with a broken tool. When we're broken, whether you like it or not, we can't fix ourselves. We need the help of a higher power. That's the point Bill's trying to get across to us here with this all these stories he wrote in this chapter. And what he's showing us here with this chapter is trying to show us the insanity of alcoholism. No matter how much we don't want to drink, something goes wrong in our brain and we drink anyway. Okay, that's all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. All right, let's close out with the serenity prayer and then we'll open it up.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Leo?
Oh, thank you, Rob.
I just want to say thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Sybil. I'm an alcoholic in Germany, pulling weeds as always. We've got, like the character defects never ending. So thank you for a beautiful talk today. I really appreciated it. Learned a lot.
Thank you for being here, Sybil. Appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. It was a brilliant meeting again, and I'll be back next week. And a nice little tip that I just every morning wake up and just say, pray for the removal of fear, and my day's usually all right. Okay, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Louise.
Bye.
Hopefully I'll see you in another meeting.
Yeah, we'll be on Friday. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, Leo. Thanks, Rob. See you
You bet.
later.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Therese.
Someone